Baserow is a very powerful platform that lets you work with a lot of data very easily. But when you work with data, especially when you work with large data sets, it's very important that you can organize and manipulate your data easily and effectively. So in today's video, we will have a look into formulas and how they work in Baserow. When you compare Baserow formulas with formulas you might know from spreadsheet programs like Excel or Google Sheets, the Baserow formulas at first look a little bit different. And that's because Baserow formulas are closer to functions that you might know from programming languages. So let's go over some of the possibilities you have when you use formulas in your Baserow database. To get started with formulas, you will of course need a formula field. So I will just enter a field to the left and name this one replace. Select formula here. And when you click into here, you get a little dialog that will show you basically all the formula options you have available. And when you have a closer look here, you will see that there are different categories. The first category is the fields I have in my database here. Then it goes over to functions that are predefined functions that Baserow offers for formula fields. So for example, up here you have like URL functions. Down here you get to file functions. And here are some text manipulation functions and so on and so forth. And these symbols here in front also tell you a little bit about the type of the functions. Because in Baserow the data is type sensitive, so for example, you will need a number type in order to calculations, or you will need a text type in order to manipulate a string, for example. So that's why the formulas are also divided into the different types. So let me show you a quick example. We have our revenue column here, and I will just replace the number 1 with the number 2 in the revenue field. And when I try to create this field, I get an error message. So the error message is telling me that the first argument I have given to the replace function is of type number, and that the replace function expects a string to work really. So when we look into here and have a look into the replace function, you can see here we have the T for the text type in front, and here it also hints that it basically needs 3 text arguments. So to fix this, Baserow offers various conversion functions. So for example, here we have the toText function, and as you can see, this function will try to convert any input we give it into a text. What we can do here now is we can combine the toText function with the replace function. Here you can see we have the replace function, and for the first argument, instead of just referencing the field revenue, we wrap this into the toText function, and that will basically on the fly convert the number from the revenue field into a text. And if we want to create this one now, you will see that the replace functions has replaced every 1 digit into a 2. So this has worked so far, but this will also give us another problem, because when we go down here in Baserow, I can just sum up the complete column here and let it calculate the sum. And if I try the same here, I don't have the sum function available, and that's because the replace function will output text, because this is a text-based function. And in order to fix that, we can just do another iteration of our replace function here. So basically what we can do is we can wrap the whole replace function into a toNumber function, and that will convert the whole replacement back into a number. And up here we can, of course, set the digits here. And as you can see here, we have the sum function available again. Baserow allows us to nest different functions into each other and to really enable us to do powerful calculations within our database here. So let's head to our contacts table. And in the contacts table, we have the first name field and the last name field. So what I would like to do is to create a field that would hold the full name as a combination of the first and the last name. So we just put a new field here to the left, and I will just name it after the function we are using. And we make this one a formula field. And when we search for con here, we will get a description of the concat function, which will basically join different strings together into one. So what you can do here is you can just place the cursor within the brackets and just select the first name field here. When we click back on the concat keyword here, you can see how the syntax is working here. So each of the fields that need to be concatenated need to be divided by a comma. So what we do here is we put a comma here and then we give it the second field. And now we can just hit create. And you can see it has combined the first name and the last name. And of course, this is not really how we would like to have it. So what we can also do is we can also put manual characters in here. So I can just enter a space character in here additionally. And you can see now we have our first name and last name concatenated together. What we can also do is we can calculate the length of the first name and last name. So we just search for length here, and I just give it the field we have just calculated with the other formula, and then I hit create. As you can see, Baserow has calculated the character length of the previous field, and this, for example, is very useful when you use Baserow to create social media content. When you use Baserow to make a content calendar and have different types of social media posts, you have different requirements for different platforms. So just let me add another field, and I will just name this if, make it a formula field. Here I have a conditional statement. So basically we are checking if the field length we have just defined is less or equal 15 characters. And if this evaluates to true, we make it a green check mark. And otherwise we make it a red light here. So if I hit create, you will see that this is working all right, because these ones have 17 characters and they get the red light, and these ones are below 15 characters and they get the green check mark. And of course we can get rid of the intermediate column here, so we can just modify our formula here and modify the first argument here to use the length function and calculate the length on the concat field here. And now we hit save. And the result will of course be the same. And now we can delete this one here. So in the last video, we have talked about lookups that were basically able to pull out columns from another connected table. And sometimes you don't want to have explicitly use an extra column to look up some values in another table. So what you can do instead of making a lookup field, you can of course just do this with the formula here. So we can just select lookup here. And as you can see, the lookup wants to have two arguments. So at first it wants to have the name of the connected field in your table. And the second argument is the column you're looking for in that connected table. So what we can do here is we can look up in our campaigns table and search for the field name and just hit create. And you can see here we just got the campaign names here. And that's basically how a lookup column would work, of course. We can also do more complicated and more useful things. So when I edit this one, and now I change the formula to the concatenate function, and here I will just combine two lookups with the space. So I look up the first name in the contacts table, and then I join this one with the space character, and I have a second lookup here for the last name. And now you can see this formula column has produced a combination of the first and the last name and pulled it from another table here. Another powerful function we can have a look into is the filter function. So for example, we had our contacts rating here. So that was basically just a star rating. And I will just do some more of these ones here. And now when I get back to the sales table and make another field, and of course make this a formula. And now I will use the filter function here. So what the filter functions lets us do here is to get values from our linked table, just as a lookup does, but it allows us to define some conditions of the values we want here. So for example, I call the filter function here, and here I have two arguments. So here I tell it that I want to filter on the rating field in the contacts table, and down here I have my conditions. So I only want to display values where the rating is above 4, or we can just make it above equal 4. And now hit create. And as you can see, Baserow is just displaying the values that meet the conditions we have just put in. And of course, it always goes more complicated. So if we replace this one here, you can see we have the filter function, and here we define as the first argument that we again want to filter for the rating in the contacts table. What I have defined here is the OR function. So we basically filter for values that are exactly 3 or 5. And when I save this one, you can see we only have the 5 values here. But when I go over to my contacts table and, for example, search for Desmond, and let's say I give him a 3-star rating here and get back here, you can see that this value immediately shows up in this one here. Another very useful formula function you can use is the button function. So for example, when I add a new field here and name this one button, then I can just click here and search for the button function. The button function accepts 2 arguments, both need to be of type text. And when I just take the example here and copy it up here and I hit create, I get a clickable button here. And this is very useful if you want to have further automations you want to manually trigger. For example, you could create a button that you can click on to trigger a webhook in some kind of automation workflow. And of course, we can also do more complex things here. So for example, when we edit this one, and we start with an if statement here. So we set our condition here. If the content of the filter column we have just created is 5, then we display a button that says send invitation. And if not, we present another button, which is schedule call in this example. As you can see, Baserow has put the send invitation button to all the values that have a 5 and the schedule call for the values that have a 3. With this, you can create very dynamic and flexible databases. So formulas are a very efficient and flexible way to work with your data and to process data in Baserow. And of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg, because you can do really a lot with formulas. So just try out formulas for yourself and experiment a little bit. And as you can see, it looks complicated in the start, but It's very easy and straightforward. So if you have any questions, just let me know down in the comments. And yeah, just have fun experimenting with Baserow. Bye bye. Take care.